Welcome back to the Tiffin Sports Performance Podcast. This is episode 3. We are doing a Q&A on some of our previous podcasts, and then we have some other questions to answer. I'm Dr. Shane Beeler, physical therapist and co-owner of Legend PT. We're here with Dr. Wren, also co-owner of Legend PT, and Justin Ruffing, co-owner of CrossFit Tiffin. Well, I guess we can dive into some of the questions. You guys want me to just read the first one here?
Yeah, let's just start that way.
All right, first question. These are just some warm-ups. If I only had 20 minutes, what's the smartest total body lifts to do, and how would I progress it week by week?
I'll start. If you have a limited time frame, best thing to do, get the most bang for your buck, is compound lifts. So we're getting some full body movement going in. So think of some things like deadlifts, squats, some bench press, anything like that we're using multiple muscle groups and not just trying to isolate like biceps, triceps, or something like that is going to be best. We want to make sure we're tracking our weights and sets, what we're doing week by week. That way we can see if we are making progress. Because if we're not, we'll come back to the drawing board and take a look at that. But we use something in physical therapy. We'll do something called progressive overload that gets transferred over to the strength and conditioning realm pretty well. Sometimes we'll even use micro loading. So it's just really small weights used during the progressive overload. But we want to make sure that we're tracking it. Then we can see those changes over time. And I'm sure Justin can touch on that. And I know you could touch on the what you guys do to track, or how you track a client
Yep. A good example in our personal training program is obviously when you're getting started, you start off nice and light, and we start with higher reps, like sets of 15. So our typical starting point is 4 sets of 15 for our main lifts, your compound lifts, and we're looking at our main body functions. So we're doing an upper body press, an upper body pull, a lower body press, and a lower body pull. So we start with, an example would be a dumbbell shoulder press. So we start with a lightweight dumbbell, and we do sets of 15. If we get all 4 sets of 15 with that weight, then the next session we go up in weight. And we go up in weight gradually. So you want to think of, you have some time to progress, right? So we don't have to progress too rapidly, and that can actually stunt your progress if you try to go up in weight too soon and too quickly. So we go up a little bit at a time, and let's say session number 2, we go up 5 pounds, and the client gets like 15 reps and then like 12, 12, and 12. Then we're going to stay at that weight until they do a session where they get all 15 reps on all 4 sets. And then we go up and weight again. And that's when we're in the beginner phase, right? When we're at higher reps. Once they go through the program once, then we'll go to like sets of 10, and we just repeat that process. So we do it based on their percentages then, and we start at a weight, and once they get 4 sets of 10 at that weight, then we go up for the next session.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I know even for your the CrossFit classes outside of personal training, you have people use an app, and they can track, like when this workout comes around again, they can see what weights they used last time.
Yep.
To see if they can,
Yeah.
either use it at least as a reference, because for some people they might miss a couple weeks of workouts. Like, hey, for you guys, don't be trying. Maybe we're going to shoot under that today.
Yep.
Or if you're like, hey, you guys have been really consistent, you're killing your workouts. Like, this is what you did last time. Let's see if we can push it a little bit today and do a little more.
Yeah. The moral of the story is make sure one way or another you're using an app, or you're using some sort of way to record. Don't try to remember this stuff week to week to week.
Yeah.
Make sure you're writing this stuff down or recording this stuff.
I think it's like try to remember what you had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah,
Most
God,
people are
no
like,
idea.
oh, it's easy. And then you start to think about it, and they're like, I have no clue.
Yeah, because you definitely, it's like a mathematical equation. You don't just want to be picking random weights and random sets and reps. You want to be mathematical about it and, have a well-planned program.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in like the strength conditioning realm, there's things, it's basically the concept of periodization. You can lay up different progression types, and this isn't really for coaches, but there are ways to do that. But yeah, the most important thing is, one, you got to track your weights, or else how do you know what you're doing? You got to have some sort of progressive overload in that, whether it's like micro loading, like you talked about, Ren, or like adding 5 to 10 pounds every 1 to 2 weeks. Maybe it's every couple of weeks. Maybe it's a couple reps.
Changing volume.
Changing volume a little bit. There's different things you can play with, but those are the important things. I always like to use the analogy, like think of those people, and this is no hate on other people doing fitness, however you're moving, I love it. But think of those people that go to some of the fitness classes where they do a lot of exercises, they use really light weights, and you're like, man, they've been going for 3-4 years, and it's like they haven't built any muscle. Like they look the same as it did, and it's like there's no progressive overload. It's like their body's not going to adapt to it and change because they're not giving the stimulus that you need to really build some muscle and do things like that. So it's important that we're going through those things if you're trying to make a change to the body. Cool. All right, cool. Next one. This one's good. What is the minimum effective dose of lifting for busy parents who want to still see results? I think that is very subjective, and the literature I know for this is a little all over the place. I think we can use some anecdotal evidence that we have on kind of what's good and bad. So basically what we've seen in person and what we recommend to people.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you recommend, Justin, to like your clients coming in looking for results?
With clients getting started, we're looking at least 2 sessions per week. We have clients who've been coming in for 2 years doing 2 sessions per week, and they're getting pretty dang good results from it.
Nice. Yep.
And then if we're talking about, if you want to do 3 sessions per week or 4 per week, you're just looking at accelerating and getting there faster. You're going to get there with 2 per week.
Yeah.
When you add more sessions each week, you're just going to get there quicker.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that goes along with a lot of the recommendations, like activity recommendations. We've talked about it before previously in one of the podcasts, 150 minutes a week of, aerobic moderate intensity exercise, and they also recommend at least 2 resistance days as well. It doesn't necessarily specify how long that resistance training is, but just resistance training. I think there needs to be a little more research to determine like what's the appropriate amount, like, all of that for each of those days. But I think 2 days is a really good place to start.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think it's pretty manageable for most people.
Yeah. I would say 2 days is really good. If you can fit a third in, that's awesome. Yep. Different ways you can do it. If you're going to be doing like full body and you're going to do that, want to do that multiple days a week, you have to do less volume. The most important part to get results is you have to be able to recover from it. I think some people make the mistake, they try to do a lot of volume. They're like, I'm going to go hit this 50-minute workout. I'm going to crush my whole body on Monday, and then I'm going to go back and do the same thing Wednesday. And they're like, man, my weights are just keep my bench press, for example. It's like I keep benching less, or it hasn't changed. It's like you're not recovering enough. So you might need to drop your volume, do some higher quality workouts. Yeah. So where you're doing maybe a little bit more weight, less reps, and do that. I usually recommend for people starting out like 30 to 45 minutes, 2 days a week, 1 to 2 sets, a challenging weight. Maybe a couple left in the tank, but that's enough. Like if the absolute minimum, you got to squeeze something in, that's enough to still make some gains, but enough to recover from. Say if you're like, man, I'm only going to get 5-6 hours of sleep in the next couple nights, and I got all this stuff for my kids, or I'm really busy with school, etc. So
yeah. Oh, here's an interesting point too. So for people that I know, work from home has been getting more popular in the last 5 years,
since
about like
COVID.
2020.
Yep.
So people that have home gym equipment, say you don't have like 45 minutes you can set aside at one time, but you have 5 or 10. If you go and say hit an exercise, do a set of an exercise early in the morning, those results can accumulate throughout the day. So you don't have to do it all, right at the same time. If you want to do 3 sets of squats throughout the day, you can walk down to your basement, go to your squat rack, you pump out some squats, pump out a set in the morning, the afternoon, the evening. It accumulates throughout the day. So those effects are still beneficial.
Yeah.
So don't let, if that's your situation, don't let, I can't set aside all that time at once, so I'm just not going to do anything.
Yep.
We can still break it up a little bit.
There's no magic number as far as getting results. It's not like, man, if I do 45-minute workout, I'm going to get results. But if I do a 30-minute workout, I'm not going to get the results. Like there's time. I don't want to say it has nothing to do with it, but that's not your most important factor. The most important factor is that you're getting the appropriate amount of reps in at the appropriate amount of weight. Whether it takes 20 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, there's no magic time domain there. It's just getting the work done and, getting done what you need to do to, stimulate your muscles to grow.
Yeah. Absolutely. Consistency is the big key. So think, when in doubt, even if you can't get a super high quality workout in, getting something in is worse than not getting anything in at all.
Yep. Better.
Getting
absolutely. Something in is better than
Yeah.
nothing at all.
That's exactly
Not
what
worse.
Ren said.
Yeah.
All right. Last quick answer here is, the question is, I hate cardio. Can I get heart healthy benefits from just lifting? I think another way to frame this is like, if I only have a limited amount of time, would you guys recommend resistance training or cardio?
I think, well, one, yes. Can you get benefits? Yes. Caveat to that, benefits can differ just a little bit between the major benefits you get for cardiovascular, disease modifying benefits from weight training versus aerobic exercise like walking or running or something like that. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can. They do differ a little bit.
Right. I think short answer is what you said. Yeah, heavy lifting, you can get some cardiovascular benefits. All the research shows that resistance training can lower like your blood pressure and
cholesterol,
reduce risk for diabetes
maintain
and things
blood
like
sugar
that.
levels.
For sure. There are some different effects between, like, especially if we're just breaking it into like heavy resistance training compared to like aerobic, exercise and things you get from that.
Yeah.
And that has to do with the energy systems in your bodies and how your cells use that energy for different processes on like a cellular level, which really is kind of too big for this kind of talk. But there are some different benefits. If I had to recommend one, I would go with resistance training. I think there's more beneficial results from carrying around more muscle mass, especially for longevity and health risk, than just doing like some sort of cardio.
Yep, for sure. If you had to just pick one, definitely lifting, resistance training. And you can get some of the benefits as far as your cardiovascular system just by the way you structure your workout, right? So
exactly.
We kind of talked about your basic movements. So you're up like an upper body push, an upper body pull, lower body push, lower body pull. You just pair those up smartly. So you just take an upper body lift and a lower body lift, and you just go back and forth between the two. So I would do, like, an example would be like a bench press along with a deadlift, and I would go back and forth between those two. They work different muscle groups, different muscles. So, and by going with a shorter rest in between, or just by supersetting those back and forth, I'm getting, if you've ever done that before, you get some cardiovascular benefits.
Yeah. It's really whatever, if it's enough to elevate your heart rate enough, you're going to be getting cardiovascular benefits.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, like, if you can do both, that's the best way,
Right.
but you get benefits from either.
Yeah.
Yep. And you get the benefits. If you're a busy adult and you don't have much time, that's the way to do it, is to and in CrossFit we call it a Metcon, metabolic conditioning style, where I'm going back and forth between 2 or 3 movements, basically in a circuit, and I'm getting in my strength training and my cardio together. So
it's a good combo. It's like it doesn't optimize, like I say, if you're trying to be a power lifter, not the way you'd want to do it, but also like if you're trying to be like a super fit endurance athlete, not the way to do it. But yeah, it is the best of both worlds. If you're an everyday person, you're like forefront, you're health conscious, and you're like, I'm going to be healthy. That is the best way to do it and save time. Especially if you're not a big cardio person, which I know a lot of people that are like, I don't want to lace my shoes up and go run, a couple miles.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's do a callback to episode 1, which we did on benefits of resistance training, why everyone should kind of work out. So this one's going to kind of be on strength training truths. The first one is, my friend swears heavy lifting will make me bulky. Myth or fact?
What do you say, Justin?
I would say for the majority of the population, that is definitely a myth.
Yeah.
Unless you are very genetically gifted, when you start lifting, it's going to take a long time and a lot of training and a lot of dialed in nutrition to get to like that bulky look.
I think a lot of people have that thought process where they're like, I don't want to get too bulky, I don't want to start working out, or I don't want to start using heavy weights. Light weights won't make me bulky, but heavy weights will. Definitely more on the myth side, like Justin said. Building muscle, we can't target our muscle building based on what weights we're using, whether we're like, I'm just trying to tone up versus I'm trying to build muscle. It really doesn't happen like that. It's really whether we're building muscle, making strength and hypertrophy changes or we're not.
Yeah.
And that's really how it goes. And I think a lot of times people equate getting stronger with, like
putting on a lot of size.
Yeah, putting on a lot of size, like bodybuilding style. And that's not necessarily true. Like bodybuilders have a specific type of workout that they do where their focus is getting bigger, building that size, but just getting general strength.
Yeah, and their nutrition is kind of part of what drives that, and it takes, like Justin said, lots of focus to get big. If it was like as easy to like, hey, pick up a dumbbell and you're gonna get jacked out of your mind, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
Right? But it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear it from, like, especially like some of the women in my life, especially like my wife, like, I don't want to lift heavy weights, like it's gonna make me bulky. And that's just like the biggest myth. They don't have the genetics nor the hormone profile to like drive these super like crazy gains where if they lift a heavy dumbbell, they're like, oh, my arm's just going to like double in size. If anything,
gained an inch last night on my biceps.
Yeah, it's like putting on muscle mass will increase how many calories they're burning at rest. If anything, it'll help them take some of that weight off that they might have just in like adipose tissue, like some fat mass, help them build some lean muscle tissue that will make them look that toned look they're looking for. And it's easier to do with, and it's less stressful on them to lift heavier weights and do less reps than it is to do really lightweight and do a lot of reps. That takes a lot out of you.
Yep. And I mean, just basically, you either need to train to add muscle, and it's hard to do. You need to appropriate sets and reps, and you got to work hard.
Yeah.
And you need to use increasing weights and increasing sets and reps.
Yep.
And the good news is, it's hard to build muscle, so you're not gonna get too bulky.
Yeah.
Unless you put a ton of work into it.
Usually doesn't happen by accident.
Yes, it does not.
Yeah, strength gaining does not equal that bodybuilder super bulky look, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Next question is, what is a simple way to tell if my training has progressive overload?
Yeah, I would say one of the best ways to see, one, if you're coming back to what we talked about earlier, tracking your weights. So one, if you're actually adding a little bit of resistance, or, there's other ways for the overload too. It doesn't have to be just the load. So like, I bench pressed 150 pounds last, a month ago. Now I'm bench pressing 155. It doesn't necessarily have to be in just that category. We can overload in other ways. We can do more volume, so more reps.
Yep.
At the same weight, we can do less rest time.
Yep. Between sets.
We can do more sets, more total reps. So there's different ways to overload. I think one of the easiest ways is just to add a little bit of resistance to a lot of movements. But some movements lend themselves to adding resistance a lot better than others. Bench, a lot of the compound movements tend to do really well, like deadlift, bench press, shoulder press. Those things tend to do really well. We can add weight in a safe way over time. Certain movements we don't want to put a ton of weight on. One, because it can put you at a little bit risk for injury, especially if it's not something you've worked into. You're like, I'm just going to start adding weight to this every week and see how it goes. Maybe not a good idea. And you think about some people doing like shoulder flies versus like a shoulder press or a bench press. Shoulder flies it's a great exercise. Maybe not something you're like, I'm just going to try to max my shoulder fly weight out. That's usually not the idea. It's a good accessory exercise to add into a program, but maybe the bulk of our strengthening and progressive overload is in like a shoulder press or some type of movement like that, or bench press or some type of pressing movement.
There's definitely movements that I would classify as like movements that we should really be pushing the weights on, like our main movements.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that you would classify as like accessory movements. And your accessory movements are the ones like, okay, we're going to get some volume in, and we still want to be increasing the weight as we go.
Yeah, as you're able
to. But, those aren't as important to overload as your main lifts.
Yeah. I think about it, for example, it's like easy way to tell. It's like, hey, my workout, let's say we're doing a push day, all right? For example, just to make it easy, we're doing bench press, or you can do an incline bench press. And it's like, hey, last week I did 100 pounds for 10 reps. This week I did 105 for 10. And then next week the plan is to do 120 for 10 reps. Like every week it's getting better. The accessory lifts that Justin was talking about, for example, you could do a tricep extension. And it's like, hey, maybe you've kept the same weight every workout there. Maybe you even did the same amount of reps. Those ones aren't the primary drivers of the muscle adaptation. They're just helping to accumulate a little volume, get you in shape, keep the muscles working.
Yeah, and it should take about, every 4 to 6 weeks we should be seeing a little bit of change.
Some sort of gain.
Yeah, some sort of gain, whether that's, a little more weight, a little more We can do a couple more reps. We can do an extra set.
Yep.
We're able to do it with a little less rest break. Something along that line is giving us some feedback to whether or not we're making some progress.
For sure.
And I would say, as far as progressively overloading and making sure you are, is I think sometimes people use too much variety in their movement selection for their main lifts. Like one way to make sure is pick a couple basic lifts, do those lifts consistently, and add weight as you go, and add more and more weight each workout. And then for your variety, use do your accessories. And
I think that's a great segue into, I think this is a good myth-busting session right here. People talk about like workout variability, like, oh, like every week or every time you go work out, like you got to do a different movement. Say we're doing chest. It's like, well, I did bench last time. Now I want to do pec flies. Next time I'm going to do like an incline bench press. It's like, that's a good way to keep getting sore from doing your workouts. It's a bad way to make progress because every time you go back to the other lift, there wasn't a great segue into like progressing your strength.
A lot of times it's usually been too long since the last time you've done that lift that we've actually lost, we call it super compensation. We've lost the benefits we got from that workout. Now we're coming back, we're at the same starting point we were before.
Right. You're better off to stick with the same main movement and continue to add weight to that movement.
And then for some people, like they get they think that's boring, but really it's the consistency that's the most important if that's our goal. And for some people, they like a little bit of variety. So like Justin said, use some of the other exercises, maybe some of the accessory exercises, get some variety that way.
Get some variety that
and
way.
then maybe every so often we can change that main lift.
Maybe every like 1 to 2 months, change that lift.
Yeah, but stick with it for at least a couple weeks so we can get some consistency.
I think some people confuse muscle soreness with like a great workout. They're like, you have to be sore, or like the workout wasn't good enough, I'm not going to get an adaptation. Muscle soreness does not equate to recovery, like hypertrophy and strength gains. You don't have to be sore to have that stuff. If it is, it just means you probably maybe you did a little bit too much is why you're sore, or something a little bit new, which is normal. Your body has to adjust to it. Or if you do lifts really slow, like on the lowering portion, like a bench press, if you do really slow on the eccentric portion where the bar is coming down to your chest, that work will make you very sore.
It tends to cause more
muscle soreness after the workout. So if your tempo is really slow on the way down, you're probably going to have more muscle soreness. If it's not and you're a lot quicker on the way down, you probably won't have as much muscle soreness. Both of them you're going to get about the equal amount of like hypertrophy and strength gains.
And to say, muscle soreness is not a bad thing.
But
if it's so sore it's debilitating, probably a sign it was a little too much.
Too much.
And
but some muscle soreness is not bad.
It's not the thing you should be chasing. You shouldn't each workout be like, man, my goal for each workout is to make myself sore.
Like, I just want to feel trash. Like, I want my body to be so sore.
That's
I can't
not.
move.
That's not how you're going to make gains.
And that's not great for consistency. Because then you're like, well, it's been 2 days. I'm back to hit that same kind of workout or same area, and you're like, well, I can't do as much weight because I'm still so sore. It's like you overdid it. That consistency and frequency is better than trying to kill yourself all in one workout. For sure. Nice. Cool. You guys want to? This is a good one here. Talk about tendon stiffness real quick. This is good for some of our people with tendon pain, some of our athletes that are trying to be more explosive, things like that. We had mentioned back in that podcast that we had talked about tendon stiffness a little bit, and that tendon stiffness is a good thing. To get some of those changes to increase tendon stiffness, like how heavy is heavy enough when we're looking at strength training for that run?
Yeah, when we start thinking about that type of strength training, we want people to be at an appropriate stimulus. So we start thinking above 70% of their 1 rep max. And they're doing sets for reps somewhere between like 5 to 6 reps up to about 10 reps. And that's a pretty good stimulus to start thinking that we might get some of those changes that we're looking for.
I always think about people that have the easiest things that come to mind for people: knee pain, like runner or jumper's knee. So knee tendon pain, that tendon underneath your kneecap, or like shoulder rotator cuff tendon pain. A lot of times people will do like some really light exercises for that. And unfortunately, it's not enough to drive an adaptation to the tendon. So over time, you've done a lot of work, but it hasn't really allowed that tendon to heal up and remodel appropriately for adaptation. So
if we're doing an exercise for 10 reps that we could do 25 times, we're really not getting enough.
Not getting enough out of it, for sure.
And real quick, like we talk sometimes about our 1 rep max. Okay, we're going to be at 70% of our 1 rep max. We don't necessarily, and we really probably shouldn't on a lot of movements, like test a 1 rep max before we start training that movement. there you can go to Google, you can go on the computer, and you can have them calculate. So you can do a set of 10, do a heavy set of 10. Put those numbers in, and it'll tell you, it'll calculate a 1 rep max for you, and then you can do percentages based off that 1 rep max.
Yeah, there's a way to kind of auto-regulate it using like a scale, like a rating of perceived exertion, or a good way is to estimate, like, pick a weight you think you could do 5 times. When you get done with that 5 times, maybe you have to do it a couple times to get a good gauge, but if you're like, hey, I think I maybe had 1 or 2 reps in reserve, there's a way to translate that to a percentage of a rep max. So that's usually what we do. It's the easiest way to do it. We don't like to 1 rep max people, especially when they're dealing with an injury where they're already hurt. Not a good idea. So something we tend to kind of stay away from. Cool. All right. Recovery. Let's transition to. Oh, this segment was good. Cool. Safety, coaching, some of those things. So one of the questions was, are CrossFit injury rates worse than other sports? Is that a narrative? People, I hear it all the time, especially in the medical field, like, oh, like CrossFitters are crazy, like they're always hurt. And like,
actually, interesting enough, I actually hear that a lot from when Shane and I will talk to colleagues that work in our field
like
of physical therapy, but they work in different areas where they're not in like an orthopedic or sports setting. They're maybe working with a different type of population
or geriatrics or something.
And you bring up the idea of CrossFit or certain activities. They're like, even in that realm, people have this narrative that you're much more injury prone and likely to have issues versus other modes of exercise.
Right. And we compare it. CrossFit's a good way to, especially like competitive CrossFit is more of the sport, right? And when we look at that, we compare it to like other sports. The injury risk compared to like soccer, gymnastics, football, it's much lower than that. It's really equal to about runners. So think of your people that train for 5Ks, half marathons, marathons. The injury rate is about the same. It's like 2 to 3 injuries every 1,000 hours of participation. So basically, you're looking at an injury like 1, maybe 2 injuries every 1 to 2 years, and those are things that would take you out of like your normal routine. Okay, and that's consistent. I mean, if you're staying active in some regard, it's bound to happen. You're gonna have some sort of injury. That is a big myth that CrossFit is like super dangerous.
Right.
Yep. And I think one of the biggest factors that goes in, and this can be applied to runners too. So if I'm a 5K or a marathon runner. Half marathon type person, or I'm doing CrossFit. The biggest thing is coaching, right?
Yeah.
So if someone is training for half marathons without a coach, they're much more likely to have some issues,
spike your mileage,
and
something like that,
and end up having an injury. Just like with CrossFit, if someone's doing CrossFit type workouts in their garage by themselves, they're much more likely to get injured than if they're doing it in a setting with a professional coach.
Yep. Right. And I think for you guys do a pretty good job of like your like proper onboarding. I think that's what we see a lot of times is people that haven't worked out for a really long time. They're like, man, I want to dive into this. I'm going to get into shape. I'm going to start working out like 4 to 5 days a week. And it's just too much. I think it's been years since they've done anything really active. Like their body cannot recover from that. So you guys do a good job with the onboarding.
All of our CrossFit athletes, they onboard 5 sessions at least one-on-one with a coach.
Right.
And then after that, we normally recommend like 3 days per week. And then from there to add as they're able to tolerate it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great.
Yeah. So I would say with the proper onboarding with coaching, definitely one of the safest kind of fitness models instead of like just kind of going in on your own and doing your own thing. That's a good way to get hurt if you don't know what you're doing, for sure. Yeah. And if you've been out of some sort of like strength training or activity for a while, it's definitely a good way to flare something up if you haven't been doing something. Cool. This is a good one for us to answer too, Ren. What should a good onboarding look like for someone who is deconditioned and they're starting back to exercise?
Yeah, I think like Justin said, I think starting kind of slow with some specific movements and then having some days off in between. So maybe not every single day. Maybe we're doing 3 days a week to start with. We're light on the weights. We're working on the mechanics. We're building up a foundation, and then we're going from there. We don't want to leave that first day back and the next day wake up and be so sore we're not able to move, right?
Right.
That's too much. That's too fast. Yes. So it's a slow build into it. I usually recommend for people that are deconditioned, probably even longer, like a 4-week build-up, 4 to 6 week build-up into like a full, like normal, like what they would classify as like, normal activity or normal exercise routine. if I have somebody that's a little more conditioned and say they want to switch programs, they're going from, hey, I've been doing this program for a certain time and I want to switch another one, probably like a 2-week adaptation time where we're dropping the resistance and things like that to get a little more used to it, or else that's where we start to see injuries pop up.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. And one thing that when you go through training to be a CrossFit coach, one thing they'll talk about is mechanics before consistency, or consistent mechanics before intensity.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so basically if we're looking at a back squat, a lot of our clients, first they'll squat with nothing, just an air squat. And once we're satisfied with our form there, then we'll add an empty barbell. And we're not going to go up from that empty barbell until our mechanics or, our form looks good. And then from there, then we go into our progressive overload.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great.
Awesome. We'll fly on to the next one. All right, this one's great. I sit at a desk. Give me 3 exercises or moves or stretches to feel better on like the daily.
I would say one would be,
you would say,
yeah. So what I recommend to people, one is, you get that horrible desk posture. Everyone's trying to see their screen, so they're leaning forward, heads forward,
looks like this.
Back's rounded. Yeah, your upper back comes away from your chair, and you don't realize how long you're there for. Your back starts to get stiff. Everyone gets this neck pain, the trap pain. So my recommendation is always every hour, find a chair. If your chair is the right height office chair, you're just going to do some back bends over the chair. We're working in the opposite direction that you just spent the last 30 minutes to an hour sitting in a static posture. So, and that's the biggest thing I see people is when they get in a static posture, not to say one posture is worse than another or that it causes pain. We don't have anything to necessarily support that. We do have something to support, like not moving can cause some of that, some of those issues. So if we are at least moving in and out of different postures throughout the day, that's good. So that's one thing I say. It's like a back bend.
Back bends, okay.
Some sort of stretch for the hips. So you get tight in the front of the hips sitting all day.
Right.
So if we can stretch out our hip flexors, that's a really good one.
Right.
So we spend, 1 to 2 minutes stretching our hip flexors. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, do that during the day. You can do it all at once or spread it out throughout the day.
Right.
2 or 3 times. And then I would say one other one would be, again, some type of exercise to kind of open up the front of your body.
Yeah.
So for this, it could be like exercise for our shoulder blades or a pec stretch. Get into a doorway, both hands on either side, kind of step through the doorway, kind of really open up the chest a little bit. I think those are some of the really good ones for people. Really easy to do at home. You don't need equipment, but they can actually help you feel a lot better.
For sure. I had a second to think about it while you were answering. So I would agree with Ren. I think some sort of hip stretch, like front of the hip. I would go with an upper back stretch. So like a foam roller, a chair extension, like what Ren talked about, where you're kind of going that way. And the last one I would do is just some sort of movement. So walking. So if everybody has like a smartwatch almost nowadays, like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch, or your phone can track steps. Trying to get about 8,000 steps in a day. I think those 3 things would be my ideal, like, here's your miracle cure. If you're going to do anything, do those 3 things.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would say the other one that I would look at doing would be some sort of a squat hold.
Yeah.
Whether we're holding on to something.
Yeah.
You can hold on if you're at your desk, and hold on to your desk while you do it. Or we can do it, without any assistance. And you'd be looking at a 2 to 5 minute squat hold.
No, that's perfect.
And on that, we can also kind of shift side to side. We can look down at the floor. We can pull our shoulders back. We can look up. And that's going to hit a lot of your musculature and joints.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. I used before my lower body days too. So you guys use that as a warm up in some of the CrossFit classes too, for sure.
Warm up or cool down.
Absolutely. All right. Next question. My 12-year-old plays one sport year round. What are some of the first flags or yellow signs, kind of that, it's not a green light where it's like, hey, keep going, we're not having problems. It is one of those signs where it's like, we don't have to stop right now, but maybe we need to just watch this or pull back from it if they're starting to complain of some nagging injuries. Or
so I'd say for younger athletes that are doing one sport year-round, things to look out for are aches and pains that last. So longer than a week, 1 to 2 weeks. If it's still hanging around, it's something to keep an eye on. We might need to get that checked out. any drop in their performance, so we start to notice like, hey, they're not up to par for them, that might be a sign that something's going on too much. Or if you see a change in their mood, right?
Yeah.
So if they're
definitely
not enthusiastic about their sport anymore and they're starting to seem like it's more of a job than, you know, an activity, that's usually not a good sign.
Right.
That might be a sign that you know, yellow flag. We gotta investigate this a little more.
Right. Might be doing too much, or they're not recovering, or something like that.
Yep. I think in any sports that have any measurables, I think there's
Yeah.
some good indicators. Like if you're playing fall baseball and you see a dip in their batting average,
Right.
you know, maybe they don't need yelled at, or
Yeah.
you know, they don't need grounded or something. They
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
need like you know,
break.
some recovery, or they need a
Yeah.
break, or they need some sort of support.
Right.
So anything where you have actual metrics that are tracked by
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
or the coach, that's a good indicator that something may be going on. Also, I think a good thing to listen for is like if your kid after practice says, my legs are sore. Okay, that's probably okay.
Yeah.
When they start to get specific, my knee is sore.
Yeah.
Now I think that starts to be at least a yellow flag of like, okay, there might be something going on here that, you know, not that they need to stop practicing, but they need some support of some sort. They need to find, you know, some sort of stretches they can do,
Yeah.
some sort of
Yeah.
therapy they can do.
Yeah, that kind of rolls into one of the other questions, which was what's normal soreness versus like an overuse type injury soreness. And that's, normal soreness, you know, lasts a day or two. It's usually both sides if you were doing something. There's no sharp pains. Overuse injuries or pains that you need to start paying attention to are sharp pains. Usually it's one spot, it's a specific location, things that are lingering longer than they should. So think if it's over a week and they're still complaining of the same thing, it's probably something that you need to look into before it becomes a larger problem. I do like some of the objectable things that I like to use, especially to distinguish between the two, especially if someone's feeling like a little burnout or like some sort of overtraining. A vertical jump test, getting like a baseline on their vertical is great. If they see a dip in their performance with a vertical, it's a good sign they're overdoing it. The same thing even with like a grip strength test. If their grip strength test is going down, it's a good sign they're getting tired and fatigued, and just kind of that's like globally, like their whole body.
Yep.
They need a little bit of a break. So those are really easy things for like coaches or yourself to kind of monitor just throughout like training cycles and activity and things. All right, cool.
How about this one? Say you have a daughter or son that is an overhead athlete, so think volleyball player, baseball player, something along those lines, swimmer. How do we balance that volume of their activity with strength training?
Yeah, sometimes it can be tricky, but usually it's just kind of limiting the total amount of reps they do in their sport. I know for pitchers, they have pitch counts. They can only pitch so many. Honestly, like other sports, especially like volleyball, how many times they hit spikes, those sorts of things, they should be counted.
How many swings?
How many swings they have, because that is a measurable thing of how much, stress we're putting on the body. Is this setting us up for some sort of injury or something like that? And then usually adding a couple days of strength training, especially for like your baseball, volleyball players, focusing on that area, shoulder, your rotator cuff. That's going to be good. So kind of pairing days with like light days with like skill days where you're doing things that are on lighter aspect, do your hard stuff together. Like if you're going to do like a heavy strength workout and then you're going to do like some high intensity hitting, I like doing that stuff on the same day so the next day can be more of a rest day. So you don't have that continuous like exposure to all that
stress.
little
more active recovery in days in between.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
And I would say any overhead athlete, whether it's in season or out of season, they should really be doing a lot of back exercises as far as pull-ups, dumbbell rows, barbell rows, any sort of upper body pulling is going to help support all of that overhead throwing that they're going to do. And that's in season and out of season.
Yeah.
That should be something they're constantly working to build. And some upper body pulling can help to then like pull my shoulders back post-workout and get my shoulders in better position to be able to recover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, working those types of exercises is really good for scapular stabilizers. Very important for overhead athletes, and for working the rotator cuff muscles. So also help support our shoulder directly. Those exercises work that really well
For sure.
and helps build up some tolerance and some tissue capacity to handle a little more activity with that overhead, with those overhead sports.
Yep.
For sure.
And I would say make sure that we're warming up and activating our lower body. If we're going to go throw, we should almost warm up like we're going to do some lifting with our lower body, or some sprinting with our lower body.
Right.
That way, as I'm throwing, I'm getting support from my hips and my legs and as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see here. All right, Osgood Slaughters, Little League elbow, plain English. What do those mean, Ren? Parent's guide to them.
Yeah, so like a lot of people have heard of Osgood Slaughters, or there's different names depending on which area we're at. Osgood Slaughters refers to the knee. It's basically knee pain from the growth plate.
Yep.
Where your tendon is attaching to the bone.
Yep.
Little leaguers, elbow. It's just stress on the growth plate in the elbow. We have GERD. It's an acronym, but it's basically a shoulder mobility issue because of a torsion and a loss in internal range of motion because of a growth plate issue. So it's basically just an overuse issue.
Yeah.
That affects your growth plates.
Yeah. These are our adolescent athletes that do a lot of sport usually. So I think Osgood Slaughters is a good one. We see that in people that do a lot of jumping or running. Mm-hmm. Basketball is a big one for that time. Like Ren said, it is at that age, your growth plates aren't fully developed, so that's where your bones are still able to grow as you get taller through growth spurts, etc. Your tendons are strong enough that can kind of start to irritate those areas. So it can cause those areas to kind of widen a little bit. It's really painful. It causes a lot of irritation. Usually that's happening from too much load through that area. So whether they're jumping too much, they're doing too much exercise, it's just something that needs to be closely monitored. Same with the elbow and the arm for like little league or shoulder. They're throwing too much. Yeah. They're stressing that growth plate area out. I kind of use it as like the analogy of like the chain. There's a weak link in the chain, and at that age, it's the growth plate.
Yeah.
The tendons are strong. The bone where it attaches, that's the area around the growth plate that's a little bit weaker. That's the first area to give. So we just kind of have to be careful with that, with those areas.
And what you should know about it is it's normal to have some aches and pains while you're growing. Mm-hmm. That's normal. But if they have consistent pain for about 2 weeks or more, like we come back and talked before, 1 to 2 weeks, especially if it's getting to be sharper, affecting what they're doing, they're talking about it a lot, it's probably a good idea to go get that assessed.
Yeah, they need to see somebody get that looked at.
And see if like something like physical therapy would be appropriate to help get a plan put together, get them feeling better and manage their activities, so we're not turning this into a longer lasting problem than what it should be.
Right, for sure. All right, let's move on to some of our performance and recovery questions. So let's rank these for recovery after a tough session. We've got protein, sleep, mobility, sauna, cold plunge.
And steps.
Steps is an option as well. So you got to rank these. And what order would you prioritize if someone's like, man, I just want to focus on my recovery. I want to work out really hard, but I want to recover. What are your go-tos? Like number one, this is your can't change. This is your number one, and then go from there.
Yep. Number one has to be sleep.
Yeah,
for sure. That's highly underrated in a lot of athletic communities.
Right.
Whether you're a weekend warrior, or you're a college athlete, or you're doing CrossFit, or you're trying to gain muscle, anything. You got to get sleep, and the benefits of that are gigantic compared to any of these other things.
Definitely.
So I would say after that we need protein. Protein's going to help. You got to have the building blocks to build muscle and to recover.
Exactly.
So definitely that. After that, and as we go down the list, the effect of each one decreases a lot, I think. So it starts to get really narrow as far as the gap between importance on these.
How different are these actually going to help
you?
So
definitely hydration, and then some healthy movement and mobility would be next. And then you start to look at your sauna and cold plunge.
Like your adjuncts.
Or like, I gotta get in the ice tub after practice or after a session. And I think there's a decent amount of research now that like cold therapy of some sort can actually inhibit recovery or inhibit adaptation.
Yeah.
So
can inhibit adaptation because it blunts the inflammatory response, which is good. That's what we want. We need that to make changes.
We need a certain amount of it.
Yeah,
yes,
we need some of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that pretty much. Most important thing is in terms of recovery is, making sure we're getting enough sleep.
Yep.
We're getting the right nutrition, right? The right nutrients. So we're eating a good diet. We're getting enough protein. We're staying hydrated.
You need enough total calories.
Yep. We're eating enough calories to support our activity. Mm-hmm. So that's really important. Some general movement, right? So we're not doing a super hard session and then I don't move for 3 days. Mm-hmm. That's not ideal either. So we're making sure we're staying active, doing some active recovery, getting some walks in, getting some steps throughout the day. We're not having these super high highs where like, oh, I had 30,000 steps today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'll have 3,000. The day after I'll have 4. The day after I'll have 5. And then I'll have 25,000 steps again. Yeah. Those ups and downs can be really tricky too.
Yeah.
And then all the extra stuff, like the other things most people think of in terms of recovery, they're thinking of, let me do saunas, let me do cold plunges, let me do like, some soft tissue work, mm-hmm. whether they're, rolling on a lacrosse ball or a foam roller, mm-hmm. Those types of things, using a massage gun.
Right.
They try to prioritize those things.
Yeah.
But really, that's not where the priority should be. Like we think, recovery-wise, 90% of that is going to be based on, how you're sleeping, what you're eating, how much you're eating. Are you getting some movement in?
Right.
The last 10% is all that extra stuff.
Yep.
And we don't want to spend 90% of our time working on the 10% of stuff that's important. Right. We want to spend majority of our time and efforts in that 90% area.
Bulk of our time needs to be spent on sleep, proper nutrition, making sure you're getting protein, and then
even things like stress management.
Exactly, stress management. And then the other one I would say is just like, I know it's not listed on here, but making sure your training load volume is staying relatively consistent.
Yep.
We all know those people that they work really hard and they want to do a ton and it backfires. It's like you did too much. Now you're doing worse, like in your sport, you're doing worse in your workouts, like you feel tired all the time. Mm-hmm. If you want to be able to do a ton of work and recover from it, you just have to build into that amount of work really slowly.
Yeah.
And there are people that can recover from those things. It just takes a really long time to get there. Think of the ultra marathoners that run, 50 to 100 mile races. Like those people slowly built up to that amount of work, and they are able to recover from it most of the time, as long as they're hitting those other 90% of the things they need to be doing.
Okay. Well, here's a nice segue into the next one. So talking a little bit about what's important for recovery. We talked about like nutrition, making sure we're getting proper nutrition, protein being one of those things. What are easy things for people to get protein? Because I know people that are like, even when they start to try to keep track of it, they're not close to the recommendation
Can't get enough protein.
Protein. They're like, I'm getting 40 grams of protein in a day. It's like, that's not, we're not quite where we need to be to support yourself.
Yep.
So like what types of things, what are easy foods people can add into their diet to get more protein throughout the day?
Yep. Number one, the low-hanging fruit here is add a protein shake.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's sometimes people hesitate to do that. But add a good quality protein shake. And I will tell clients, up to 2 servings per day is acceptable. We don't want to be having like 4 scoops of protein each day.
That's a lot.
Because we can have some other consequences from that. And we also, we're missing out on some of the other benefits that come along with the foods we eat.
Right.
But, up to 2 servings or 2 scoops of a protein shake each day, easy, right? You can do those post-workout. Really, you just got to post-workout, before bed, anytime really. Mm-hmm. And then you can choose the types of protein based on a couple different types of factors.
Yep. Sure.
But then as far as other stuff, and part of it is sometimes people have trouble just because they don't like eating meat or like certain tastes of different foods. So for those people, we look at Greek yogurt a lot.
Yep.
We can add some berries and stuff to that for some healthy carbs. Same thing with cottage cheese if that's something that people like.
Right.
So that's ways without eating meat that we can add some protein into the diet.
Yeah.
Right.
Easy way to do it is get like the the pre-cooked rotisserie chickens from like Kroger or Sam's Club, or if you go to Costco or something like that. Super easy protein. Good way to get some of that in. Hard-boiled eggs are a great way to go.
Yeah. Yep. I say eggs are a good addition. You can fashion them in many different ways.
Especially like now in today's society and like the availability we have of food, carbohydrates, not hard to get. Protein, like high quality protein, hard to get throughout your day. So
I'd say adding other things like nuts and seeds. Yeah. Great source of proteins, but you also get some other nutrients from it. So
all the good stuff.
That's really good.
Yep.
You know, if you're in a you just need something quick and fast, and you're not a big shake drinker, you know, getting some of those like cans or packs of like fish, or
tuna can
salmon,
be really good.
those types of things. Those are pretty easy. Add it to a salad. If you have a salad, add a little protein to the salad. You know, if you're not a big on meat, you know, adding other things with proteins like beans and legumes, those can be really beneficial to add into your diet. So there's options, and a lot of it can be pretty easy. Just add into what you're already doing.
Right.
Yep. And if you're an athlete, like you're really trying to gain muscle, I mean, I don't think there's any substitute for beef and chicken.
Yeah.
And depending on what body composition you're looking for, you know, chicken, you can get a lot of protein for a relatively low number of calories.
Right.
So I mean, that's if we're trying to be an athlete that's lean. You know, chicken's definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
But you know, if beef and chicken are your two best sources of protein.
Yeah, I think animal-based proteins probably like give a nice nutrient profile, which is good. You don't have to be as conscious of the other things you're eating, but there's a lot of
trying to make
options.
sure you're getting the essential amino acids, like animal protein and products like dairy. Those all contain all those, so you're kind of hitting that nail on the head at least. If you're really like struggling with that, talking to like a registered dietitian is a great way to go about that, especially like a sports medicine dietitian.
Somebody who works with athletes,
all right, why does training for a race, which I'm assuming is like marathon, half marathon, and losing weight backfire? I think this is a good one for even if like, I think another way to think about it is like if someone is trying to work out a ton, they're like, I got 2 months, I want to lose 40 pounds. Like, why is that a bad idea? This could be for bone health, etc.
Yeah, I think it's, especially in the viewpoint of runners, trying to lose a lot of weight while also training for a specific race can be a bad idea because of the demands of the training and the race you're preparing for. So if we're doing like an endurance race, we're training for a marathon or something like that, a half marathon even, and we're putting in a lot of miles, and we're in a calorie deficit, we're doing an activity that's very, you know, energy intensive. And if we don't have the energy to support that, and we're not taking that energy in through what we're eating, we have to get it somewhere. So what can happen is our body starts to break down our bones, which is an ongoing process. It's always happening. The bones are always being broken down and being built back up. But at some point, you know, that should be equal. But if we're not fueling enough, the breakdown starts to take up a bigger percentage than the buildup. So now our bones are taking the brunt of that. That's where people you see who come in, sometimes stress fractures, those types of things pop up, not necessarily from a training error, but might be from a nutrient.
Could be an underfueling issue.
Yeah,
especially if, and I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to get in good shape. I want to run a marathon or a half marathon. I don't want to lose some weight while I'm doing it in the process. Like, it's a great way to lose weight and get in shape.
Yeah,
It can be. You have to just be very careful with how much weight you're losing. Because that should be the focus outside of the training.
I would be careful going on a very strict diet while training at the same time. What I would do is try to, work one thing at a time. Like, let me try to get a little more active. Let me get a little bit more fit. Let me train for this race. I'm not going to put any restrictions. If I'm hungry and I'm starving, eat. Listen to what your body's saying. And then after the race is over, we can dial back the intensity on the activity a little bit.
So much.
And then the focus might be a little bit more on the nutrition side. We're still getting our activity in, and we can lose weight in a good way without putting our,
just to be in a safe way,
risking harm to our bodies. But if you have questions about that, it's good to talk to somebody that knows how to guide you in that process. Shane and I, when we have people that come in with stress fractures, things like that related to nutrition, we refer someone to a registered dietitian that knows what they're talking about in that realm, that can help guide somebody.
In that aspect. But I think about it like if someone comes into CrossFit and they're like, or for personal training, and they're like, I want to lose, my goal is to lose like 50, 80 pounds and a lot, and they want to do it quick. I think some of the detrimental effects to like what they're trying to do, they're like, I'm going to work out really hard, lose all this weight. I'm just like not going to eat any food. And I'm like, you can't build any muscle mass that way. You're going to lose a lot of your muscle.
And the number one thing, if we're going to be healthy, and if we're gonna lose weight and keep it off long term,
in a sustainable way.
In a sustainable way, we've got to build muscle mass as we go.
Absolutely.
And whether I'm looking to, I'm doing personal training or I'm training for a marathon, one of the biggest things, and like we talked about towards the beginning, is to record things.
Right.
And whether I'm doing it in an app or on paper, have an idea of how much you eat. Because there's times if I go throughout the day or throughout the course of a week and you ask me, like, how much protein do I eat each day? Like, yeah, I get plenty of protein.
Yeah.
But then if you really just simply track it and write it down, and you can use the Google machine to help you a little bit,
yeah.
you realize, oh my gosh, I only have 70 grams of protein, on average the last 5 days, and that's not enough to support
It might not
your activity.
support either training for a marathon or trying to gain muscle.
Right.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps, training volume, whether you're lifting or running, like your mileage. Make sure we're putting that down and recording it somewhere. And then also like overall calories, or, I'd either say track total calories or grams of protein. And just so you have an idea of that. And then from there, if you do get help from a coach or get help from a professional, they have more data then to be able to help you out sooner. And when we have people come in and they want to lose weight, the first thing we do in our evaluation is, what have you been doing and where are you at? And the better information they can give us, the quicker we can start to get progress, because the week one, if we have a lot of good information, we can start making progress week one.
Right.
If we don't have a lot to work with, week 1, 2, and 3 is like
it's
an evaluation.
Yeah, you're getting data to make some decisions.
Instead of getting, working towards progress right away.
Right.
So
Cool.
keep track of your numbers.
That's right.
All right, do we want to finish up with a couple myth-busting lightning rounds?
I think this one rolls into one of the myth questions. So, real quick, your personal, we'll do like a red light, yellow light, green light for deciding if you want to train, modify your training, or rest. I think we all stay relatively active, so it's a good way. I think for me, training, like a little mild soreness, and as long as I feel good, I'm good to go. I'll do whatever I have kind of pre-planned. My yellow light is if I have something that's been a little bit achy more than normal, or I'm not feeling like I have as much energy, I might modify it. Okay.
Yeah.
Red light, if I have any sharp pains, I did not get like good enough sleep, I feel sick, I'm just gonna hold off on the training or reevaluate when I feel a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like pretty much green light for training. It's a pretty typical day. You wake up, might have a little muscle soreness from what you were doing the day or 2 days before, but you feel good, energy's good night's sleep. Yellow for me is like, hey, like Shane said, ooh, something's been aching a little bit. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I tried this 2 days ago, still pretty sore. Maybe I'm going to modify today, see if I can still do it. Or if bad night of sleep, my body might feel great, but I'm like, I was up for 3 hours last night. I got 4 hours of sleep or something. I'm not going to push it like I got a full 8 hours of sleep. It's not, not ideal,
smart.
Right? So I might modify my training a little bit. Maybe I do half of what I planned, or I do a lower intensity than what I planned. And then red light, anything sharp pains, sickness. If you got the flu, take some time
Don't try to
recover,
work out through that.
right?
Yeah.
Just get a short walk in if you want to do something.
Get things moving.
Low intensity, those are kind of like my red.
Yep.
Got any specific ones, Justin?
Yeah, and I'd real quick, green, just system-wide soreness, or body, top to bottom body soreness, general soreness. You're good to go on that to train. Yellow, it would be anytime I have a specific body part that's going to limit me. So if I'm going to do a movement where, as I'm doing the movement, all I can think about is my sore elbow.
Yep.
I'm not going to get results from that. If all I'm thinking about is, man, my elbow's killing me. So I need to modify, maybe to some other movements, so I can still train and still get some results from that session. By kind of avoiding the things that are going to be bugging me, right?
Right.
And then red, like you guys said, big time lack of sleep. Any sort of illness, fever, anything like that. Like there's times people are sick and they're like, "Oh, I still got my run in for the day." There's no need for that. If you're sick, you're running a fever.
You don't have a contract on the line.
Just rest.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Let's do 2 myth-busting kind of lightning questions. Yeah. Keep it real short, and then we'll wrap it up. Myth or fact, endurance athletes should lift light weights and high reps only.
We're going to say myth. We already talked about this a little bit, but heavy lifting is going to help improve our running efficiency, our running economy, and it's going to reduce our overall injury risk as long as we're following a good plan.
Yep. I'll take the last one. Myth or fact, pain always means stop all training until it's gone. Just kind of covered it. It is a myth. You want to modify, scale your workouts. Rarely do you need total rest. A lot of times if you totally rest, rest is not medicine. Things will not get better on their own. Usually you need a little bit of help to kind of guide your body in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah, throughout life we should always, our entire life, we should always be training in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
And, that's just always going to change as far as what that exactly looks like. So.
Yep. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Cool. We'll close it down.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for episode 3 on the Tiffin Sports Performance Podcast. If you have questions or something, go ahead and drop them in the comments on whatever you're viewing this on, whether it's like YouTube or Instagram. That being said, go ahead and follow all of our social media. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, as well as check our podcast out on Spotify and
Apple Music.
Is it on Apple as well too? So go ahead and check all that stuff out.